Welcome to Nacht Waffen Pilot with Penny Bradley, and today we have Joseph Powell back with us, and we're still exploring the range and depth of his memories. And like most of us, as he talks about it, more things are coming up. So his depth of memory is starting to fill in some of the blanks. And this is a common thing to have happen to us. So don't think that he's making shit up, because what he's told me is very consistent with what the rest of us remember. So welcome back, Joseph.
Hello.
And
nice to be here.
I'm going to start off with asking you what memories you have that you're sure are with Nacht Waffen.
Okay. Well, the beginning of the memories that deal with Nacht Waffen is their craft, which was showed up, like the third craft that showed up and picked me up. It was kind of like, how the fuck? It's weird to explain. It was like kind of round, like what most UFO pictures look like, but it had the Iron Cross, and it looked like it had some kind of a gun, like in most of your videos, how you've had like photos of their craft.
Oh,
It looked,
so it's a Hanabu.
yeah, it looks similar to that. For some reason, it looked like it was barely hanging in there, as it was picking me up.
Hanabu used anti-grav tech, so it would create a gravity well right in front of it, and so it was like constantly falling into this well. So it was like, it was,
Yes, that's exactly what it looked like. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, good.
They give off a hellacious amount of radiation, and all of their crews get radiation sickness.
Nice.
And that's the original reason why we were given regen technology.
Okay, that makes sense. But yeah, so like when it showed up, like I felt like I don't know how to like a darkness, like a, not really per se evil, just maniacal, and I turned to run because it was like the third craft, and I was like, I felt like just in the moment where it's like deja vu, and I was like, fuck no. And I turned to run, and like I just went boom, and this guy went out.
Sounds like it wasn't your first trip.
Yeah. But that's like right around the time I started feeling things from craft. It was like I came back, felt the first one, and then the second one showed up, and then that one showed up, and I got like it freaked me.
About how old were you then?
I believe I was 14 at the time. So it was quite intense though. But from that point, the memories that came after that, I was in an adult body. So I don't know what happened from there to there. I have basically memories of laying on a table and in a dark room. And I know that it was like on a ship, because I could sense like I had this feeling that it was on a ship. And there was a guy that looked like a doctor, and he was dressed in a white lab coat. He was like sadistic, he had like a sadistic way about him.
Doctors are in all of the factions.
Yeah.
The ones that
But
actually care about us are few and far between.
yeah, he only spoke German normally. He could speak English, but he preferred only German. I didn't even know what he was saying, but I could tell that he was speaking German, which was a little weird to me. And there was a woman that was there, and she had like blonde hair and blue eyes and stuff. The guy that was that looked like the doctor, I think he had like black hair, and I don't really remember his eyes per se, other than that they looked crazy when he would torture me. He would like get off on it. So, But I would be laying.
A lot of that with the CIA at Langley. They
Yeah.
they would really get off on what they were doing to us.
Yeah. Like, it was like the girl, she would watch it, but for some reason, like, she wasn't very into what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
The first one wasn't. The second one that replaced her was. So it was like having two crazy people torturing me. But from from what I remember is, like, I was on this table. It was an empty black room other than the table I was laying on, and like there was like a heart monitor, some kind of heart monitor that was there on the right hand side, like right above my head, um, like right next to it basically. And it was like he was asking questions, and like at first he wasn't even asking questions, he was just electrocuting me. So like with what would be a cattle prod basically is what I've come to equate it to. And it's like I would be like, what do you like? I'm not telling, for some reason I would say, I'm not telling you anything. I'm not going to tell you anything. I'm never going to help you. And he would like just fucking electrocute me. And he would like laugh as he was doing it. And like, I would basically be electrocuted until I passed out. So I don't know what was going on with that instance. I've come to the conclusion now that he was probably trying to pull an altar out or create one or something. I don't know, for sure. But
Maybe create one, because they normally use a code word to pull an altar out.
yeah. And
Or
it
a
was like,
noise, something like they used to use noises similar to what fax machines use.
mhm.
So,
It was like the room, the lighting in the room was weird. It was like, it was red, kind of like a red tinted, like a red tint kind of. Um, but it was always dark. So there was no real like actual like normal light that you would see, which I thought was weird, personally. But it's like, so he would continue to electrocute me, and then he would like I always kept telling him I'm not going to help you, and he was like, eventually everybody breaks, you know. And I'm like, I was like,
that
I'm
sounds
never going to help you.
more like um, creating an altar, or pressuring your agreement to serve with them.
Yeah. um so eventually, like, between being electrocuted, like, he would only say certain things in English, but he mainly spoke German with the other girl. Um, and there was a point where I woke up and my fucking hand was severed off. My left hand was just cut off. And I like looked at my hand and I lifted it up, and like it wasn't it wasn't like tied down like it normally would be. And I was like, I started freaking out. And he started like
Yeah.
laughing about it, and I'm like, what the fuck did you do to my hands? you know? And he sat there and like, I was like, why are you doing this? I don't understand. And he was like, he said something that was weird for me, but he was like, well, you know, you can't always do so much good. Eventually you got to counterbalance it. And he fucking just electrocuted me again until I passed out. And at one point I woke back up laying laying on this fucking table, and like the girl was there by herself in the room, and she was like, she had like some kind of thing that she was like going on and like doing like taking notes and stuff. And I started crying to her, and I'm like, why are you doing this to me? I don't understand. I was like, it doesn't, why are you hurting me? Why are you doing this? I know you're better than this. And she was like, I was bawling my eyes out begging her. And she started like getting really emotional. Like it really affected her when I started doing that. And I was like, something happened where she just started bawling, and I heard this voice from off to my right hand side, um caddy corner basically. And it was like, it basically told her to leave the room, and she like ran out of the room. And After that, um I came to, and there was a different woman that was there that was a lot older. um she kind of looked like you, kind of, but not 100%. And
Okay.
She straight up spoke German only. She didn't like speaking any form of English.
You may not have
And
understood English.
yeah, and her and him would just feed off of each other as they would torture me, and they would like laugh maniacally. It was like creepy as fuck, you know? And eventually they brought in these empty cages, and had them stacked. Like, so if I was laying on the table, I could look forward, I could like look up, when my head wasn't strapped down, and I could like fucking see cages that were all empty, and they were about the size of a dog cage, like an average dog cage, for like a medium or a little larger size dog,
So we're
and
talking German Shepherd size.
something like that. Yeah, pretty much. Um, and they were like, they were all, they were just like faced against the wall. They were stacked up, I think like up to like 3 or 4 stacks. And then across to the point where I couldn't even really see, and at that point I was being tortured still, and I would pass out, and then I came back awake at one point, and there was another cage that was brought in that was a lot like a human-sized cage, but they had a blue alien-looking being that was there. He had like, I think he had like red eyes, like just like
Was
complete.
he humanoid or reptilian or avian or what?
Looked No, he wasn't avian, but he looked humanoid almost, but he had like a big head,
Okay.
and he sat there, and he wasn't we spoke telepathically back and forth,
Mm.
because I was like, I was telling him that I was sorry, because I knew what was going to happen to him. I felt that he was going to be tortured, and I was telling him, I'm sorry they're doing this to you. I was like, I'm sorry we're doing this as a species, just as a human species, because I had like a connection from when I was in Ashtar Command. So like, I felt sad for what was about to happen to him. And when I was speaking with him telepathically, basically apologizing and stuff, he basically responded with, "What do you expect from your kind?"
That's how we're seen out there, yeah.
And I was like, I was so sad at hearing that. I just broke down, emotionally when he said that. And that's when like I ended up just like blacking out. And man, that was a horrible situation. And like I still can feel that, emotionally, just like his words weighed pretty heavy on
Well,
me.
every faction out there pulls the same stuff towards their assets, towards their prisoners, and towards ETs.
Hmm.
The only ETs they treat well are the ones that they know will destroy them in a heartbeat.
Yeah. But after that, like I came to, and that cage was gone. The taller cage was gone, and then all the other cages were filled with little kids. And they looked like rabid. They looked like little kids, but they were dirty. They had like rags on, um, like tattered clothing and shit, but they acted like rabid dogs. I would equate it to. Um,
You go
and
you go through enough torture, that's what you turn into.
yeah, like they were broken basically. Um, and it was like these kids. There was one specific one that was sitting on the very top left hand side that was in front of me, and they were like looking at me, and like when I would be tortured they would start like freaking out, and like the cages would shake and stuff.
Mm.
But eventually the guy that was there, that was like the doctor, he walked up and was like, well, maybe you'll start doing, he said something along the lines of, maybe you'll start doing what we need if we start torturing one of these kids. And at that point he walked up to the cage and started moving to the kid, and the kid like lunged back against the cage on the like caddy corner to his left hand side and curled up, because he knew that he was about to be hurt. And when he went to go to open the cage, I was like, I'll do whatever you want, just don't torture the kid, don't torture the children, whatever you want, whatever you want. And I was like, please just don't. And he stopped when I said that, and he was like, really? And he had this treat that he pulled out of his pocket with his right hand, and he went to go give this kid a treat, like you would an animal. And the kid took the treat and he started like laughing, like the dude started laughing maniacally, and the kid started laughing with him. Like he started going, laughing with him, and then all of a sudden looking at me, and he started laughing even more. And
That's called Stockholm syndrome.
yeah, that's what I would equate it to.
A lot of people who are kidnapped and tortured start to identify with their captors, and it's kind of a survival mechanism. And I see a lot of it with people who've been abducted by ETs, especially the ones who all of their cover memories are positive.
Mm-hmm.
They'll have deeper memories that they don't access very often that are darker, but if they're just going with the cover memories, all they think happened was positive, and so they think these people are wonderful. And I use the term people as an intellect in a physical body.
Yeah, I understand.
So it could be.
I mean, I consider them all people in a sense. They're all.
Once you've been out there, you understand that they're all people. But yeah, the Stockholm syndrome is a real issue whenever we start having people come forward with their memories. And some of them, everything's negative, and some of them, everything's positive. And when you start looking beneath the cover memories, which I hope you're doing, I teach this to the people that I counsel, that when you go into these memories, you ask your subconscious to show you what really happened. And when I do this, I literally see curtains open and an entirely new memory appears. And not enough people are doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to know what really happened instead of what the cover memory is. Because we've got people that are scared to death, and you've got people, oh, these are our welcome space brothers. And both attitudes are dangerous.
Yeah.
Yes, there are monsters out there, but my experience is that most of those monsters are humans from Earth.
Yeah.
So
I mean, there's some really powerful people out there, and I use people loosely, but there's from my experience, it was basically more humans that were more ruthless than most of them.
That's been my experience as well, is that the humans are the worst thing out there, that everybody else out there are smart enough to understand that torturing the human isn't going to get them anywhere.
Yeah. But anyways, past that. So after that, I passed out eventually, and I woke up again, and there was a man dressed in all black, basically like what your normal officer uniform was, which almost looks like the Empire's uniform.
Yeah. In the Star Wars movies, yes. When those were bootlegged to my ship, we watched them and we thought the Empire represented us. And so we had the reverse of the usual reactions. We could not understand these idiot rebels. Now on Earth, I understand it a whole lot better.
So this individual was like, "Sir, are you ready?" He basically asked me if I was ready to help, since I said I would help. And I was dressed a lot different than I was before I passed out. I basically had kind of like a black uniform on in a sense.
Okay.
And I I wasn't cuffed down. There was no restraints on my hands or my legs anymore, which I didn't even realize until after he was like, "Are you ready?" And my head wasn't restrained. And I was like, I basically had said, as long as you're not going to torture any kids, what do you want me to do? And he told me to come with him. So I set up slowly, and then got up on my feet. And it almost was like, how you have submarine floors where like, it's almost like they're like lined drains almost in a sense. That's what the floor was made of. It was like metal and it was all black. And then there was double doors that were normally facing my head where I was laying down. So it was like on my right hand side when I stood up. And we had walked up to the door and stood there, and I was like, I looked at him like, what the fuck's going on, And then all of a sudden the doors opened up, and I was like, whoa, I wasn't used to anything like that. That was, it
Yeah.
was a lot different. Uh,
Doors open. You don't have to do a knob. And the only time you have to do something is if it's a restricted area, and then you have your handprint in your retina.
yeah, he basically used his mind from what I could gather, and opened the door. And I think that that's something that I felt from that. But we walked through the door into like a lit hallway. It wasn't like super lit. It was still kind of darkish, but it wasn't like dark as it was in that room. And we walked to the left caddy corner, went down to the next door, and it was on the right hand side. And we stood there, the door opened, and we walked in, and there was what looked like a, a brand new, almost dental chair. And it was, it had black padding for the seat, and for like what you sat on, and it had like chrome metal around it. It looked brand new, um, which was pretty weird to
How
me.
many mouse pads did it have?
I don't remember it having anything like that, honestly. It would just look like a chair from what memories I have. And he told me to sit down on it, and I was like, well, what are we doing? you know? And I was like, well, what am I supposed to do? I don't understand. Like he was like, sit down in the chair and lay back. And I was just like, okay. So I like sat down in the chair, and I was like, what am I supposed to do? And he was like, well, you're going to go on your first mission. And I was like, what's my mission? And he basically told me, well, you'll find out when you're there. And I was like, what the fuck does that mean? you know? And he's like, you'll understand when it comes time. And I was just like, okay. And he was like, just lay back, you know? So I laid back, and it was more like ordering. Like it wasn't like, oh yeah, just lay back and kick back. It was like lay back, So I ended up laying back,
Well,
and right after that,
many officers are like that.
yeah. um, so when I laid back, I went straight from there. Um, and it looked like almost like a wormhole in a sense, but it was like blue and white lights that fluctuated in rapid succession. And there was like
That is a
a
wormhole.
yeah, there was like a center point, and I was just going through that, and I ended up in what was like a child body, basically, from what I could remember, my next memories. And I was standing um, in the cold, freezing my ass off, and there was like a young girl that was on my right hand side, and I think there were like two other boys on my left, and there was two men, uh, on like catty corner on my left hand side, and one of them was getting ready to speak, and there was, and he basically was saying, you're mine now, in like, in short form, he was like, you're mine now, you're going to do what I tell you. And he was like, and if you don't, if you try to run or you try to escape, you know, he was like, you're going to turn out just like this kid, right? You know, he was like, just like this kid right here. And I could hear a kid like kind of crying a little off to my right hand side in the distance. He had been like maybe a yard away, not even really. And he was like kind of scared and like crying. And then like the dude that was on his left hand side, he was dressed like what we would know here and now as in a leather SS uniform, officer's uniform. He had the full thing, the full get up. It was, and he had like 2 Doberman pinschers that he had on leashes. And he basically, after he said, "This is what's going to happen to you," the guy let go of the Doberman pinschers, and they rushed forward, and the little boy started crying and turned to run, but he wasn't fast enough. The Doberman pinschers basically just were on him. One of them grabbed his like almost his Achilles heel, and the other one grabbed his left arm, and they basically, you know, went opposite ways to pull the kid down. And they started biting up his leg, and the one that was on his arm like bit up his arm, and then they eventually got to his face and started chewing up his face while he was screaming and begging for his life. And then he basically had said, like, if you try to do anything, this is going to be what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen to you. And he looked over at the guy and nodded that was on his left hand side, and the guy basically pulled out some form of a pistol and walked forward, and then walked up to him and shot the kid in the head. And when he was being chewed up, the girl that was on my right hand side, she had grabbed me and like was like crying and was scared, and the other 2 boys were like crying, and I was like, you know, I started getting kind of scared, but I was the most calm out of the 4 of us that were standing there. But I was still freaked out, you know. I just was in so much shock I couldn't even cry, really. And
Well,
after that,
that's a side effect of the torture you had already survived.
yeah, I think
Where the term is dissociative, and it's you mentally, you step back from what's happening around you and you don't respond to it emotionally. And it's probably the only positive skill that came to me from all the stuff that has happened is I can go through hell, take care of the situation, save as many people as I can, and then once the crisis is over with, then I can fall apart and have my emotional reaction. But that's what you're describing, is because of the torture you had just described where you kept passing out. Now you're coming to this situation and you've dissociated from it. That's why you're not reacting. But mentally, you understood everything that happened.
Mm-hmm. And it was like the only thing I could remember is that I had a mission, you know. So I didn't know what the fuck my mission was, but I knew I had a mission, so I was always trying to find out what the fuck it was. But after that had happened, we were led. I remember, like, I have fuzzy memories of being led up to the house that was off in the distance on the left-hand side of us, like catty corner, where there was like lights.
Was?
Yes, it was on Bashan Island, which is off the coast of Seattle. And it was basically owned by Thomas J. Stewart, which is Thomas Joseph Stewart, and his first wife, and also the woman that ended up becoming his second wife. That they all 3 lived there. His name to his friends was Tom. His name to me, I called him Master. Eventually, we were led to some dog cages that they had in their laundry room, in the house, and we were put in there was these 3 cages, and there was a boy that was already there and me and the girl were basically put in. The girl was on the left-hand side. There was a boy that was in the middle, and then I was on the far left originally. And this boy was a lot older, and he was, I was trying to find out like what's going on, like who are these people, and they kept us in the room, and when they shut the door, it was dark, and we could see a little bit of light from underneath the door. When you walked in, the washer and dryer were on the left-hand side, and there was like some kind of shelving on the right-hand side where they kept some of their stuff. The cages were ratty and shit, like they had been used. The paint had been stripped from them for the most part, from my recollection. And I was asking the kid, like, what's going on? What's going to happen? And the kid that was there with me was like, well, you're going to die eventually. So just get with that, He's like, we all die eventually. And I was like, what? You know what I mean? And from that point, he was taken out of the cage after a few, like, say 20, 30 minutes. And we were removed from the cage and brought into this area that was basically, if you went downstairs and went off to the left, there was a wine cellar. And that I remembered later in some of the memories, but it was like at that point we had black bags put over our heads and we're like walked into this area. And they're not black bags, but like shit was tied over our eyes so we couldn't really see. But like when you lift your head up a little, you can see the underneath and see some of your surroundings a little, which is something I learned from when I was a kid, in my training. Like some of the training I went through as a child, it was just second nature to do that for some weird reason. But I sat there and we were brought into this like cave area. So it was like you went through this wine cellar. There was like where the lights were, they pulled down the light and then a door opened from behind. There was the wine cellar area would open and you would go in, and then you would walk through this cave-like structure, this rock-like structure. The walls and the floor and all that was all rock. And then you eventually would come to this altar. And there was, when we came, from the memories I have, there was, we were in the clothes that we came in first, and the guy was dressed in a brown robe. He had what looked like a goat head almost, but it was like just the straight horns. And he was all naked, and he had like, he had a little dick. Like I remember his little dick just swinging around and shit. And there were 2 women that were there and they had masks on and they were naked too. But they had like red robes, almost like kind of burgundy red. And their masks are a little blurry, but it almost reminds me of Eyes Wide Shut would be the closest variant for people to imagine. And basically he had me kneel down on his right hand side, and he had the little boy that I originally met, like the older boy that I originally met, laying on the altar with his throat cut open and his wrist slit open. And there was like buckets and stuff that were there that the blood was draining into, exactly like how Tony explained it. And he basically stated that if I called out, that I could call out to my God, whoever my God was. And if he came down and stopped him, he would let me go. No God came. And he told me that basically I would have to eat some of the flesh you know, drink some of the blood and eat some of the flesh of this kid, or he would take me and put me where this kid was in his place. And so I did it. You know, I drank some of the blood and ate some of the flesh, and from there, you know, it goes kind of dark for my memories. And we eventually were,
It would go dark after that.
Yeah. Eventually we were back in the cages, but it was the girl, then me in the middle, and then they brought in Tony when he was a kid. He looked like a kid basically. And he always wanted to play, you know, and I was always like, fuck you, you know, like we're in some real shit. And this dude, you know, he was trying to just be like, you want to play? And I was like, fuck off. You know, I was like, no, you know, and I kept trying to like talk to the girl and like try to comfort the girl, you know, because she was there with me originally, you know, and it was, she would talk slightly, somewhat, but eventually she would get taken and brought back and taken and brought back. And it was like she died a little every time, to the point she was almost incoherent sometimes, you know, like broken. I have memories of after that ritual that we did, whatever the fuck that was. I was brought out in my tidy whities because that's what we got to wear. We were basically left unclean and in tidy whities. And the second woman, who ended up being his second wife, she was like 17 at the time. She had talked about, you know, I was brought out and sat on the couch, and she was talking to me about how I was looking at her, and if I thought that they were, you know, hot and shit, you know. And I mean, I'm not gonna lie, they, you know, they were naked, and you know, I'm a human, but it was like she eventually got on top of me and, you know, had sex with me. And it was, I kept asking her, I was like, can I at least get a bath? You know, I'm dirty. Like, why would you, you know, like, why would you want to fuck me right now? You know, and she, it didn't matter to her. And like the mother, or, you know, what is a weird situation, but his first wife was like kind of disassociated with the situation.
Mm-hmm.
She kind of watched, but was watching TV in a sense. And she ended up, I would equate to raping me in a sense. It was like willing and unwilling. It's kind of twisted, I guess.
Well, people who think that men can't be raped are wrong. The body will often respond in spite of the will of the heart.
Yeah. So it was like after that.
You're surprised to hear that from a woman.
Yeah.
Those of us who have been through this shit, even though I was not involved with that situation, when I was 4 years old at Langley, I was raped and sodomized repeatedly, and saw the similar things happening to the boys that were there. This is not something that only happens to one gender. This is something that happens to all of us who have survived the Black Ops. This is, regardless of who did it, this is our common story. And I'm not judging you for it.
I know.
You did what you had to do to survive. And you need to forgive yourself for it. Yeah, I know. It's the hardest fucking thing in this whole thing, is forgiving yourself for what you were involved in against your will.
Well,
it's all a violation. And you should not be feeling guilty for it.
I don't know. I don't know. I had choices to make, you know. And I remember making those
And
choices.
how old were you?
Uh,
You were 14 when you were taken, and this was a year, maybe two later. So real world, you're maybe 16 and you're put into a younger body. And you're holding yourself responsible whenever the courts here would not.
yeah.
I mean, come on.
Well, like,
That's something that people listening need to wrap their heads around. We were childhood abductees. We were kidnapped and used against our will. We should not be feeling guilty. And yet every one of us are.
well, but anyways, I was put back into the cage and stuff after. Um, and it was like eventually like that memory goes black and then I come to again, where I had memories of another boy who was like a teenager. He had like sandy blonde hair. Tony talked about him a little, but not too much, you know. He was like like almost like equated him to like being a surfer, like one of the cool kids. He brought me out of my cage. He was watching us for, I guess, for like the weekend, I think. Um, and I was basically there was a sandwich that was sitting on the table, and you know he had me sit on the couch that I had already been previously raped on, in a sense, you know. And it was like they still have the same couches at the same place, which is weird because I've seen
Yeah,
videos and stuff.
they just keep them.
Yeah,
Their stuff.
and yeah, I mean they're dead now. I got my vengeance. I'll just put it that way. A little late from my perspective, but uh, anyways, like I
Better
sat
late.
down on the couch. Yeah, I, I sat down on the couch and there was the sandwich. I thought it was a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, was kind of weird. And he was like, you know, I went to go take a bite and I was like, oh, it's only peanut butter. And he was like, well, you know, it's better than nothing, basically. And I was like, well, you know, all I need now is like a shower. And he was like, he sat there and looked at me. He was like, what do you think this is? You know? And I was like, I just guess I'm eating and, you know, maybe I'd get a shower. And he was like, oh no, this isn't what you think is going to happen. He was basically was like, that sandwich isn't free. And
Mm.
he basically forced me on my face. And there was like a quilt blanket that was on the couch, like one of the ones that you make, like, you know, how you always have like old ladies that make those blankets and stuff, like what my grandmother would do.
I have made those.
Yeah. He,
Remember, I'm 65, so yeah,
I know.
I have made those.
Well, I only remember you as being like, when I see you as like,
Yeah, out in space, I'm 25 forever. And they put me in regen at least once a month to make sure I stay that way. But
yeah,
here I'm 65 and I've raised children and my grandchildren are in high school.
yeah.
So,
Um, but yeah, he forced me on my face, and I remember like biting into the quilt blanket and basically pulled my underwear down and raped me, until I blacked out. Um, and then my next memories were uh, being in that cave area with the altar and another kid kind of like crying a little, and I was like, it's okay, you know, and like gently rubbing his hair when I had like a blade in my hand and like I slit his throat on behalf of my master. And you know, basically we performed a ritual. He had this watch. I remember sitting there. He had this gold watch, and I found it interesting when he took it out to check the time, because it was always timed. There was always a time frame that we had to meet for some weird reason. I was like, okay, you know. But he took out this watch, and I remember his watch. It was like a Swiss watch, and I was like, that's a nice. I was like, that's nice. What is that? And he was like, it's my watch. It's my father's watch. And it had some words on the back, and I was like, wow, can I have one? And he was like, you're a slave. You're never gonna have anything. And that time he didn't have any goat head on or anything like that. It's just like he was dressed in a fucking suit, and you know, we were just doing a ritual. It was like that was like two different situations, because like the kid was a different one, and then like that one was a different situation, but
Okay.
it was the same scenario. There was already a dead kid there. But I basically considered him my master. And I would kill the kids for him normally.
I can see that happening. We talked about Stockholm syndrome, remember?
Yeah, that's why when you said that, I was like, yeah, you know. And eventually it came to the point in some of the memories that I had where I was brought out in like some kind of chain gang situation with other boys, and you had the pool area, and then in between the pool there was like a lake on the property, and they had a bunch of people there, and some security guards that were really fucking ruthless, like really fucking ruthless. But they were pretty high up people, and there was girls off to the distance, and there was like tents that were like white and red, you know, like carnival tents almost. And it was dark, and there was a bunch of kids getting fucked. Most of them were drugged out, you know, and anyways, they
I think Tony refers to them as they were the party favors.
yeah. So his wife had walked up with this guy who was clearly gay and a pedophile, and she was like laughing with him, and like, you know, when you walk a woman down an aisle, how you hold their arm and stuff, like she was holding him like that and guiding him to me. And he was like, oh, he was like, oh, you look, you know, he was like, you look cute, and basically was like, rubbed his finger down my chest and was like, I could lick you like a lollipop. And I just basically was like, don't fucking touch me, you effing F pedophile. And he was like, he like lurched back when I said that. And she was like, Tom's going to hear about this. And I was like, no, don't tell Tom, you know? And, you know, the security guy had hit me and was like, you know, basically told me to keep my mouth shut. And eventually that night I was laying on the ground getting fucked. And but yeah, and eventually I remember having memories of sweeping out their barn, or it was like a horse area, during the day and stuff like that. Eventually, once we acclimated to knowing our place, and wouldn't run. And I have memories of talking to his wife where, you know, Tony is sitting there playing, and me and him and another kid were sitting in the living room, their living room in their house, their main house, because there was multiple houses on the property. That was just the main house, because they bought all those properties. They bought separately in parcels to make one big property.
They
and it was
do
called
that to ensure there are no close neighbors.
Yeah, it was called Misty Isle Farms, which was the actual property name. And like he would feed the Boy Scouts that were there on Bashan Island steaks, which I don't know if they were really steaks or something else, you know, because I don't know, he got off on doing some wicked shit. But eventually we had this situation where I was like talking to the mother, and I was like, why don't you, you know, she was saying something, and I was like, why don't you help us escape? And she was like, she said some shit, which is funny because I looked it up in her court records for her divorce, where she was, you know, she had told me when I was talking to her and Tony was there, and she was like, I only get $100, you know, $100 a week, and I'm not going to spend it on you guys to try to get you on a ferry to escape. She was like, I wouldn't have any money left. And I'm like, I was like, what the, like in my mind, I was like sitting there hearing her say this, and I'm like, what the fuck, bitch? Like, I'm not even worth trying to save. Like, fuck you, you know? And in the middle of the conversation, the teenager that ended up being a second wife was like, hey, you know, like checked her and was like, watch what the fuck you say, because, you know, Tom might find out, you know? And she kind of shut down after that. You know, they would check each other. It was weird, you know, it was like keeping each other in line about what they said and stuff. But you know, it was just to find out that I wasn't even worth spending money to get me on a ferry. I mean, I didn't even know there was a ferry. I was like, I thought we were just on a piece of property. I never, you know, as a kid, I never really paid attention to, you know, people actually being able to afford to live on an island almost of their own practically, you know. So it was like, it's kind of weird. And I remember eventually trying to escape later on. And I found out that there was a massive fucking water lake area, you know. But beyond that, like there was a ritual that we did that Tony has talked about with Glassman, and that was pretty interesting to watch happen. It was like the emerald green shards were there when this being started coming through, and he was wearing like this suit, and I hit him with light and stuff. It was kind of interesting watching Tony talk about me.
Yeah.
But it was like we were basically told, which kind of threw Tom off, because he gave us a choice, you know, and asked who wanted to sacrifice himself. And he was quite taken back when I said I would sacrifice myself. But I had a telepathic conversation in that moment where I was told to use love and light from a being that I knew from the Ashtar Command, which was weird because I didn't know what to do. I got scared, and this being came through and said, use your love and light. You know how to do it. And I was like, what? You know, and I was like, this has to be my mission, you know? So I figured my mission was to stop this fucking, you know, whatever the situation was. And
I'm gonna say that if this person was summoning something, that it wasn't something that we really needed here.
yeah, it was pretty dark. Whatever this fucking thing was, it was something else. But it was weird because Tony was like, I could read his mind at that point, and I could tell that he was like, didn't want to die, and kind of was like stuck in between wanting to be like, kill him, you know. And I was like, don't worry, you know, this is my mission, you know. And I started speaking to him telepathically, which creeped him out. And he was like, what the fuck, you know, what is this? And I, you know, and I was like, listen, when I tell you, just think of love and light, you know.
Tony was never meant to be one of us.
Yeah. So I mean, it was pretty interesting because I thought it was gonna kill him, but I was like, whatever the fuck this is, you know, I gotta, you know, I felt I had to stop it, you know. So I was like, I don't know. At that point, I was just like, at least we're gonna stop whatever the fuck is happening. And this, you know, I told him, you know, I'll tell you when. Just use love and light. And he was like, what the fuck is that? You know, I was like, just focus on love and light, you know. And this being came through, started coming through, and I was like, now, you know, and I fucking used this fucking white energy and hit this thing, and it was like, what the fuck? It literally was like, what the fuck, you know? And and got like all perturbed and like was like fucking, you know, just like went away, but it was like pissed, you know, and like he was talking about, like Tom was like, did you see it? Did you, is it here? And, you know, and we were like, you know,
No,
you know,
you just send it back. That's all.
yeah. So, but yeah, eventually, you know, like I said, I tried to escape. I came across the fucking vast ocean and I was like, fuck, you know, and like I was being chased by whoever the fucking hand was that was on the property. And he eventually fucking, I was put in a cage in one of the secondary houses for a while until Tom came back to make his decision on what was going to happen. And I was chewed up, and then I was brought out to one of the areas out in the forest area and then shot. You know, I was made to dig, you know, dude was digging a hole and I was laying in the hole all fucked up. And I was like begging, like, just let me escape, man. And the guy was like, I'm sorry, you know, this is just what's going to happen. And then he shot me in the head and I died. And then there was a craft that was sitting over the lake, and like my soul was taken into this craft basically. And I was sitting in like this glass kind of jar almost as a spirit, I guess you would say, or equate it to.
Okay, I understand that technology.
Yeah, and I was like, I was
It
interfacing
is
with
a
the gray.
magnetic bottle, and yes, souls are trapped in that until the magnetic field is released.
Yeah, like I was interfacing with this gray, and he was like, you know, he was like, ask any question you want, you know, and I'll answer it. And I was like, you know,
Yeah, and it may not be the truth.
yeah. And we were talking, and I was just like, well, is anybody going to find my body? And he, you know, he had said something that I didn't even know existed until now, obviously, because it wasn't even talked about. But he was like, you know, he's like, well, there might be a possibility your body might get found, but it's a clone, and the genetics will probably be too depleted for you, you know, for it to even do anything, for them to find anything or equate it to you. And I was like, what? You know? And he was like,
Back to your body that was on the ship with the man
yeah.
and with the dog.
After interfacing and talking to this gray, I eventually went back to my body, and I came to in the chair and I set up real quick, you know, kind of like not completely, but like halfway. And I was like, what the fuck, you know?
How did I know this happened? Um, yeah, like I said, experience is common to most of us, although I was not subjected to that particular master.
Yeah. And he
Do a
the
tour of Montauk instead. And trust me, it had electrified cages.
yeah, like
So
I didn't have to deal with that. I don't know. But the officer was standing there, and he was like, oh, you're back, you know? I was like, yeah. And he was like, at that moment I felt that I had to, like, I was like, what, you know, did I complete my mission? And he was like, no, you failed. And I was like, what the fuck? You know? And
man was still alive.
I see, and that's, I'm still torn because I don't know if I was supposed to kill him or what. I think that might have been the case from the way the conversation kind of went, but I was like, oh well, fuck, you know, I can, you know, I didn't know I was allowed to kill him, you know what I mean? And so I literally, like, when I was like, when he said that, I was like, you know, I threw myself back in the chair and I went back through that wormhole and I interfaced with this other soul, and I talked to this soul um, about what was going on and who this person was. And, you know, I needed to use her body, and she was like, I sent her images of what he did. And the soul was like, what the fuck, you know? And the soul allowed me to use the body, but said, hey, you know, like, don't destroy my body. And, you know, I was like, okay, I won't. But that was a lie.
Did you?
Yeah, I did. And I ended up in a little girl's body, which happened to be his daughter. Um, and we were getting on his helicopter that he had. And it was me, his second wife, which was Medina, and the pilot, her brother, and his name was Abdul, and Tom. And I was sitting like in the middle originally in the front seat, because there was like the front seats and the back seats, and then they had the two dogs. And I remember asking about the Doberman Pinschers, and Medina was like, "Oh, maybe she saw a photo of so and so," and she was like, "No, we don't have those dogs anymore. We have our poodles," and they were two black poodles.
Mm.
And they didn't mention the dogs from all the things that I found so far. They mentioned there's two dogs that died, but they didn't mention what they were. And anyways, we got on the helicopter, and it was weird because I was in a short little body, you know? So I went from like being like a teenager and adult, and then back into like a really short body, like a little girl. She was like 4 or 5 or something. Can't remember off the top of my head, but I'm sitting there and I'm watching the pilot fly, and we're like flying in the air in this helicopter. And then, I start trying to lean forward to see how everything's going. And I had full recall of who I was in space as the person that was in the chair. It was full on me. I remembered all of that situation. I remembered everything this fucker did. And so I tried to move forward to like push the shit that moves the helicopter forward. And the pilot was like, "Hey, don't touch that," and like started like getting angry. And like Tom was like, "Oh, don't do that." And the guy that was piloting the helicopter was like, "You crashed the helicopter and kill us all. Why would you do that? Like, you need to get your kid under control." And fucking so Tom like put me on his lap, and he thought I was his little girl. Surprise, motherfucker. Like basically we eventually I was able to kick the fucking controls with my foot, and that caused the helicopter to fucking go nosedive. And then the pilot and Tom in the process yanked the fucking helicopter up, and caused the blade, the back blade and the top blade to fucking crack together.
Mm.
And caused it to go spin out of control. And in the process, Medina, like, I had looked at Tom and I was like, "Burn in hell, motherfucker," because I was still in that belief.
Mm.
And he looked at me and he realized I wasn't his kid, and he fucking threw me out of the helicopter. And he didn't have his harness or anything on in the process. He didn't wear it. And Medina was like, as he was trying to throw me out of the helicopter, Medina was like, "No, that's my baby girl. What are you doing?" And like started getting out of her harness. And her brother was like, "No, Medina, don't do that. Like, keep your harness on," And needless to say, like, he flew out of the helicopter in front of me and died in front of me. I hit the ground. I felt the rubble and rocks as they tore through my flesh and stuff, through the flesh of this little body. And I remember like making sure that he died. And then it was like I just let go, like my spirit or whatever, just like let go of this body, like almost like I equate it to like an anchor. Like if you put an anchor down on the water, it'd be like pulling up an anchor, and eventually it just drifts off.
Yeah, that's kind of how I experience dealing with the body. Is there's an anchor here that as long as I leave the anchor, then I will come back to this body. But if I ever chose to disconnect from it, then I would be out there.
Mm-hmm.
I've had several death experiences, and the last one I had, beings literally drag me back and reconnect the anchor.
Wow.
So I was told my job here wasn't done.
Well, I ended up back in that fucking chair, right? I slammed back into my body, and like because I felt I was on a ton. I didn't know if the dude was going to pull me out of the fucking chair or what was going on. So that's why I felt like in a hurry, you know. And I was just like, I gotta fucking kill this guy, you know. And dude pulled me, like I came up and like dude was like, what the fuck? What the fuck did you just do? You know? And he got like, he was like, you're not supposed to do that. Like he was like, we're under contract. You can't do that with this. You know, with the equipment that we had. And I was like,
Really?
yeah, I was like, well, he deserved to die. And he was like, you didn't have to do it like that. You should, what the fuck? He was like, that wasn't even clean. You just, how are we going to do it? How are we going to clean this up? And I was like, well, you deserve to die. And he was like, there's millions of them on the planet. What the, he was like, what the fuck? You're not going to kill them all. And when he said that, I was like, there's millions of them.
Yeah, there's millions of them.
And I was like, why can't I kill them all? And he was like, he got really freaked out. And he was like, God damn it. Like,
when you start talking in those terms, people think you're the problem. So you need to rein that in a little.
yeah.
I understand the wanting to kill them, especially after being victimized by one. But when you start talking about killing them all, you end up making enemies that you really don't need.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm just like saying in general, that's literally what I said. And he was just like the officer was like, and he said, you're going to have to clean this up. And I was like, what? And he was like, yeah. And he was like,
what did you do to clean it up?
Well, first I got off the chair and he was like, come with me. And then he took me back to that room and I got tortured again for disobeying an order, you know? Yeah. And then eventually I remember like in the process of cleaning it up, I would be doing missions back and forth between Earth and wherever the heck I was going to. And we would be on like a craft. And I basically was under orders of whoever this officer was. And cleaning it up meant going to a man's house by the name of, what the fuck? His name was Tom Little, who oversaw the investigation. And I've contacted him directly. He was really coy about the whole situation. So I know that he remembered me coming to his house. I was wearing my full black uniform, knocked on his door and he answered it. And I was like, hi, my name is, I was like, I'm here and I wanted to talk to you about this situation. And he was like, okay. And he invited me into his house, which is weird. I was like, good thing I wasn't there to hurt him, because, I mean, in a way, but he invited me in his house. He was an old guy, kind of old. And we sat down. We went through I think it was like his kitchen was there. And like we went through and like there was a living room and he had like some wooden chairs with cushions and he had a TV and stuff. And we sat down. I believe he sat on my right hand side and I sat down, or it was like vice versa. I can't remember. It's kind of fuzzy, but I remember saying, hey, I need you to cover this up. And like, he was supposed to be some kind of dude who would have probably done that. He previously, before he worked in that, he worked for Raytheon, which I'm starting to find a heavy connection.
Doesn't necessarily mean that an individual is corruptible.
Oh, no. Don't get me wrong.
Working for Raytheon is sketchy.
Yeah. I just found that out recently, but it was kind of funny though, because it was like he wasn't to an extent like, because I started explaining and I was like, I need you to cover this up. And he was like, why would I do that? Tell me what happened. So I went through and I told him exactly what happened on the helicopter, what I did verbatim, which he came out in public and stated verbatim past the fact of me jumping in this little girl's body. And there was another guy who was dealing with the investigation, looking into their investigation, was like, there's no way he would know that the little girl was sitting on the guy's on Tom's lap and, or that she, and all this other stuff, dealing with what had happened, because the family was trying to get, compensation, and said it didn't happen the way it happened, but it did. But it's just funny though, because like people are like, that's not even in the documents. How the fuck do you even know that? You know? But eventually, after I got done telling him what happened, he was like, we got into where I had said, you know, there's, you know, I was like, basically, to sum it up, there's aliens. And he was like, there's no such thing. And I was like, it doesn't matter what the fuck you think, you know?
There's
and,
no thing. All
and
right.
then he was like, well, why don't I turn you in? He's like, well, what's stopping me from turning you in? And I told him, well, there's no law against jumping into people's bodies and killing people, is there? And he was like, he thought about it. He was like, well, fuck, there isn't, you know, basically. And I threatened him, and I told him that I would have somebody that looked like me that would come along and try to talk to him, which I found kind of awkward in the, like, living through that conversation, like watching it happen. And he basically told him that if he said anything, he would come back and hurt people that he loved. And anyways, he got back on, like, he left and got back on the ship that he was on, and the guy that was there piloting the ship was like talking to him, and he was like, well, what happened, what are we doing? And like, he was like, well, I'm under orders and I'm just cleaning up the mess that I was ordered to clean up, so just fucking get back in the seat and let's go, you know. And eventually, like, I ended up, in the process of going back and forth between Earth and there, I took the liberty of hunting people down that I remembered their faces and their names. And
So you were kind of being a Men in Black.
yeah, but I wasn't authorized to do some of the stuff I was doing. Like, I was authorized to, by my commanding officer, to clean up my mess. I took leeway to hunt people down from my childhood and his first wife. And like, I've come across those
So
memories.
you really cleaned up the mess.
Yeah. Yeah, it's anyways, and then I have memories of like being on like a Mars looking area eventually, where we were given an option of uniforms. And I remember there was like
The option of uniforms I had were black, white, or gray, with some areas I was also allowed a blue.
yeah, the uniforms that I was offered was white, a shit brown Power Rangers looking one,
Oh, that thing is horrible.
and then the black uniform. And I was like, the black uniform looked the best. And I was like talking to dude when he was telling me, you know, and he was like, well, there's no protection with that uniform. And I was like, well, that's fine. At least it looks good. I mean, why in the fuck would you want to dress like this? And his officer walked up and fucking shot me with some kind of fucking weapon. And he was like, see, if you wore the fucking the standard issue uniform like you were supposed to wear, you know,
That's true.
you wouldn't be in pain right now. I was like sitting there in pain, like fucking, like, fucker.
That is how they prove their point.
Yeah, it taught me a fucking lesson.
Yeah. When you are offered a uniform, you ask which one is the preferred.
Yeah, I ended up wearing the shit uniform.
Yeah. On Mars, that particular set of choices would mean that you were with the German militia.
Yeah. But I remember like
See, I know the uniforms.
yeah, I found it kind of awkward because I haven't heard anybody talk about the shit uniforms, you know, the shit colored uniform. But
I remember when I was there. Now, remember, I was there from 1964 to 1990. So that was before most of the people that are public now. The last couple of years, we've gotten younger people. But so when I was there, it wasn't brown. It was that desert camo and it was digital before Earth was digital, but it was that desert camo that's a rust red and orange and pink and white and touches of gray to it.
Mhm.
And that really looks sucky as a uniform. And I had a flight suit that was all that. And they gave me a choice between the desert camo and the navy camo. And I ended up with the navy camo. And I got an artist and tried to explain that to him. And I have mouse brown hair with red highlights, and he had me as a blonde and in a solid blue uniform. And he had Mars, when you're there, it's just dirt colored. I don't know why it glows red from Earth. But this artist, everything he drew was bright, bright, bright. And I'm
Darker.
what the hell are you drawing? He did get the desert camo right on my ship, but nothing about me was actually correct. And I had given him a photograph of me at that age, so he should have been able to. And it's just down to, you get these people and they have an idea set in their heads and you can't get it out with a baseball bat.
Mm-hmm. So I'm equating, remember how we talked in the last interview about that Mars location? I'm wondering if, I'm assuming now that might have been Nacht Waffen that I was a part of, just because of the way the uniforms were.
Possible.
But
I thought it was possible at the time, but there are several bases on Mars that are Nacht Waffen, and there are several that are Mars defense. They call it Marsische Heimschild or Martian Home Shield. Does that sound familiar at all?
yeah, something.
Marsische Heimschild. That's what they would have called it. And so I'm seeing the faces you're making, like I just opened a whole can of worms in your head. When I was first public, all of the names for everything were in English. And I had this bright idea. I said, Germans wouldn't be calling themselves by English names.
Mm-hmm.
And so I basically went into a shamanic trance and started pulling names out from my own memories. And then I had everybody and his brother adding shit to it. And there was a radio show, an internet podcast called Reality Brief. And these were a couple of anarchist hippie dudes that would smoke a bowl before every show. Yeah, they were a trip. And they had a drinking game for every interview I wasn't in that my name was mentioned. You had to take a shot. And you would end up drunk at the end of most interviews. And
so who's Penelope?
me. That's my real name.
Okay.
That's what my daddy named me. Penelope is, okay, when I was at Langley, they called me 7 because that was my room number. But when I got to Mars, I was Penelope, or as they pronounced it, Greek style, Penelope. And then when I got to be 19 and they put me into a ship, they tacked on Valkyren because that was my unit. And I was a lieutenant. And I got up to what they ranked a second lieutenant, and I ended up in trouble, so I was back to a shaved tail. But yeah, they called me.
Trouble because of me, or
No,
different
I was
situation?
the agent who activated my memories, had been number 5 at Langley. And he was my long-term lover on Mars. We we survived Langley. We went to Shula on Mars. He was who built the Mars net that several others talk about. He was, even on Earth, he was a fucking genius when it came to linguistics. And on Mars, he spoke English, German, and Russian. He is who set up the MarsNet and set up all the different programming so that you were only given access to what you were authorized to. And he had all of the settings where that you could be given this category and everything would open to you and you wouldn't have to keep nitpicking at everything. And he had everything uploaded in English, German, and Russian. And yes, we did have that many Russians out there. So in 1990, the Mars War was officially over. And I was sent to investigate reports of officers being captured by Mars Raptors. And I got there and it was him. Now, we had spent 30 years together. Okay, this was someone I loved. And no, we weren't allowed to have a marriage, but this was a long-term committed relationship. And to find him being eaten alive by Mars Raptors, I did a female response instead of a military response. And I panicked. And my ship interpreted the panic as fire all weapons. And so the Mars militia informed me that I was no longer trustworthy to be entrusted with that level of weaponry. And so they sent me to Nacht Waffen as punishment. And because of my job description out there, I'm usually trapped on the inner section of the ship because I have a connection to the ship's computer that makes me a potential security leak. A pure telepath can get into my head and access that chip and connect to the ship's computer and get through all the defenses. So I have to have that connection to do my job, but it makes me a security risk. So from the time I was transferred off Mars, I was de facto a prisoner on the freighter that I served on for 25 years. I was not allowed out of that security zone. So that is my usual. I've done 91, 60 and backs with Nacht Waffen, and I am almost always a navigator, and I am almost always trapped in that security zone and never allowed off ship. Because if a pure telepath has access to me, they have access to the ship's computer. And so it's a situation where, yeah, I'm out there. Yeah, I know what's going on my ship. Yeah, I know where the ship's going. Yeah, I know what we're doing. But I have no idea what the civilian culture is like because I've never been part of it.
Do you remember the first time you blew up your first planet?
Yes. I have blown up so many worlds. There were a group of mantids who contacted me about 3 years ago. They were not part of the Mantid Empire. They were not part of the folks on Mars. They were a different reptilian group. And they had been involved in a war, and their homeworld had been destroyed, and they had like 6 ships full of their people and nowhere to go. When they contacted me, it was a pure telepathy, and their entire emotional background to it was that they were summoning a demon because of what I was like in Nacht Waffen. I have destroyed more worlds than I can even possibly count between these 91 trips.
Do you remember how I had you do it, though?
What?
Do you remember how I had you do it?
I remember being on a bridge and seeing the screen of the planet below, and that there was an EMF shield around the planet that we could not get a missile through. And I linked to the computer on the missile and replaced it as it went through the EMF because it destroyed the computer. And so it was me running the missile. And as it hit, I watched it on the screen on the ship, and the whole thing just giant fiery ball.
Do you remember superheating the core of the planets with your mind?
I remember doing that, yes. I remember dropping rocks. I remember dropping asteroids. I remember superheating a certain person's brain.
So when I first had you do that, that was like a few, not too long after you blew my head up. We were at this planet, and I remember originally, like, we would crash asteroids into planets, use the tractor beam from the craft to do that, to hit the surface and shit. But I remember eventually,
all you have to do is drop it from orbit, and the kinetic energy of the fall turns it into this horrific weapon.
Yeah, I got tired of showing up to planets, and like when we would show up to planets, they'd be like, "We're not going to pay you," and I'm like, "Motherfuckers!" Like, you know, it got old after a while. I remember it getting old, you know, and finally, I remember just eventually just showing up and having you basically send them images of what we would do to them, whoever their leaders were, if they didn't pay, and I wouldn't really give them any length of time.
That I remember we would show up in orbit and the planet would surrender to the Draco rather than deal with us.
Yeah. But I remember the first time you did it, the first time you superheated the core of the planet with me, you almost couldn't. It took a lot out of you. But I told you to focus on the core of the planet like you did my head. And you were like, I can't do it. And I gave you an order. I was like, you know, I ordered you to do it. And after I ordered you, you were like, you know, you kind of were pissed because it was fucking you up. But
I hated the orders you gave me. 90% of them were in violation of regulations. And all of them violated my conscience.
Yeah.
Every damned one of them. And I got to where every time you did this, I sent a report to High Command.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to be blamed. And after you spaced me for blowing up your head, I didn't have any more choices.
Yeah, I
because
remember I
I
wanted
can't
you dead after that, but they wouldn't let me kill you. I remember that for sure. I remember that conversation,
yeah.
and it was it was basically I couldn't do it. They wouldn't allow me to have you terminated. Um, and I remember the whole situation. Like, so with the person that I loved, you know, that void carried over to other altars. Um, and for some reason, like with my altar, I had this void that I even have today. It's really fucked. Um,
Yeah,
and
well,
that
I
altar
felt
that I
that way
was,
about Steve, number
yeah,
5.
that altar that I had, he was looking for companionship. And I remember when I first came on the ship that you were on there before I was. There was an older officer that was there. And I mean, he was an old dude. And I basically came on board and he was being relieved of his position for retirement, as he thought it was, whatever the fuck that meant, you know?
Retirement means that they send you home. It means that
Yeah.
your time is up 20, 40, 60 years, depending on your genetics and what they can drag out of you. And you
He
might
was,
go home for 30 minutes and they take you again.
yeah, what a dick move, right? And I'm like, he said retirement. And I don't know who, like, what all I knew, but in that altar, I remember kind of chuckling inside because I'm like, retirement, all right, buddy, you know. And
Yeah.
he he told me, basically gave me the rundown of the ship and the crew, some of the crew, specifically you. He told me that, like, don't even try to have any relationship with you, but um, and that altar, for some reason, my altars, if you tell them not to do something, they're like, oh really, you know, because there's, you know, my altars are pretty stupid. um, and
Well, I
I
took my
remember,
job seriously, and I was SS, and the black goo made tripled my IQ, and I was so sick and tired of being treated like I was other
yeah,
because of the Draco DNA. I was so insulted and disrespected, and yet I was completely fucking necessary for the ship.
yeah,
And I
but
was asked to do things that no other officer would have been submitted to.
yeah, he, he gave me the rundown of like the things that I had you do, giving you orders to service myself. Um, he basically told me that that was an okay thing to do. He told me your nickname,
Mhm.
which I
My
got from
nickname
him.
for the audience, my nickname is Miskabert, which translates into an abortion that lived. Simply because I was injected with Draco DNA before I was born.
And yeah, I remember I tried to have a relationship with you, and you were basically like, you know, you were business basically, and you didn't even like the situation that was happening. You kind of remind me of like Daedalus almost emotionally, in a sense. Like, you
Daedalus?
had emotions. Yeah, like from Star Trek, like, you know, Daedalus, the dude that had like the pale skin and like,
Oh, Data?
yeah, Data, sorry, I meant Data.
Okay.
That was kind of your output
I was
outwards.
actually more like like Mr. Spock, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was like a mixture from my memory perspective, but
Uh, the black goo that you drink in SS, it makes you human and robotic at the same time.
yeah, I remember it, like, not liking the fact that you were on Black Goo. Um,
It made me
only
where
because,
I could do my job.
yeah, like, I know that you were really successful, but I remember not really liking it to a certain extent. Um, just the Black Goo in general, because I have like memories of going on on one mission where I was supposed to kill, and this was before I became the captain of the ship we were on. But I remember going on this mission where I was in a soldier's body that I had jumped into, and there was some kind of general that was there, and I was sent to kill him basically, and because he was learning too much about the the program and the Germans. And he was talking to us, and there was another private that was there, and he was a really good guy, you know. He just he knew that something was going on, and he wanted to put a stop to it.
I think there's a lot of people that know that there is something going on and they don't know how to put a stop to it.
And
At the same time, they don't know why it's going down.
Yeah, we were on like I guess like a B-50, like a big plane, and we had landed, and he told the pilot, you know, to keep the plane ready. And me and the private were standing behind this guy, and he walked off the ship, and he was like, "Hey, I just want you guys to know, whatever happens, I have your back." And we got off the ship, and my commander, who would put me in the chair, came down on a craft, which shocked the dude because it was like everything he knew came true before his very eyes.
Yeah.
And he was like a real fucking patriot, a true patriot.
The problem is that the people here have not been told the truth. The truth being that the Germans in Antarctica won World War II, and that all of this space program has been America's treaty to end that part of the war. And at the same time, America has never, ever released the German-speaking countries in Europe. We have them completely fucking enslaved.
Yeah, this guy, he wanted to out the situation to the public. And my commander came off the ship and was like, basically like, "So what the fuck do you want?" You know? And he had said something, and I got the order to kill him. And he had looked back surprised, like he didn't see that coming, you know?
Yeah.
And I took out my pistol, and I didn't want to kill him. I didn't want to kill him.
Following orders.
And I disobeyed his orders too. It was I basically begged my commander not to force me to shoot him. And he asked me why, and I was like, because he's real. He's an honorable person from my point of view. And he was like, "I gave you an order," and I was like, "I never asked for anything. Don't make me do this." And he basically said, "Fine, shoot the private." So I turned my pistol on the private and shot the private that was on my right hand side. And I thought we were just going to leave the guy, and he kept begging. Like, eventually got on his knees, and he was standing in front of me facing the commander, begging me to not do it. He said, "You're better than this, you know." And I was like, I have to follow orders, and needless to say, I thought that the commander was going to let him live.
Nope.
I started walking, and he shot him in the head instead. And then we got on the ship, and he basically told me that he was going to black goo me for being disobedient because he couldn't handle that happening any further.
Black goo is not a punishment.
I don't know. That's just what he told me, and it freaked me out. And I was like, I don't want to be black gooed.
I wasn't given it as punishment. I was given the opportunity.
Yeah.
For it. And it was something I had a choice about, and it was presented even-handed. It was, you will triple your IQ overnight. You will never be sick again. You will have endurance beyond any human you know. But it will be at the expense of your normal human emotions. That the only emotion that I would have left was the ability to be angry.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. And they were very upfront about it, and it was a choice I was given. I was not forced. But they knew my abilities, And the best place to use me was as a navigator, where I would replace a Draco or a Gray on a ship.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was required for that position. So yeah, they were wanting me to do it, but they presented it very objectively and even-handedly, and I knew the side effects going in.
Yeah. Like me, I knew of people that were black good and how it changed them. And I didn't want to be like that, you know?
Well, I wasn't black good on Mars. I
No,
was
no,
I
I'm
was
just saying,
black
like,
good after I went to Nacht Waffen.
yeah, like I knew what it did to people. And because I had met people that were black good and
It
how they changed.
out your illogic. It takes out your irrational, and it takes out all of the emotions that drive people crazy.
Yeah.
And yes, I understand why people take it. I
Yeah.
do. Now, on the other hand, I understand that black goo is a sentient AI and has its own agenda. And it is literally the most dangerous thing in the galaxy, and and is a threat to all organic life. So, but I understand that
But
from a position of having interacted with it.
yeah. But I remember, like, after he said that, I freaked out. I was like, no, don't do that. You know, it was like, I don't want to be black good. And he was just like, well, you know, you're not following orders. So we're gonna have to do something. And I just, after that, I blacked out. But that's why, like, even when you were on the ship, like I was on the ship and I was your captain, like, I didn't really like you being black good as a personal thing.
It was a requirement for my job.
But yeah, it was. And then it
And
was
if
like,
you had not had me on black goo, you would have had a Draco or a Gray.
yeah, I
And
remember
they
that
would have been
there was,
even harder to figure out.
I remember that there was a Draco that was on our ship sometimes. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, and I remember when we got
And I was
the
probably the only one who could interact with this Draco.
yeah, I mean, I remember, like, talking to him, but it was brief and, like, fucking, you know, I couldn't really be around him too much. But it was like,
Well,
um,
no, you're not hardwired for one.
yeah, and it was like, but when I was when like the order came down that we can get him off the ship, like, I didn't, for some reason, for me, I didn't like Draco. I didn't like him on my ship. Um, Probably because it just made me feel uncomfortable as fuck, you know. And
Well, you've screamed at me more than once that I'm nothing but a Draco in a human body.
yeah, yeah, I have memories of stuff like that. Yeah,
Yeah, our relationship there is not pleasant for me.
I
Uh,
know.
has not been pleasant from day one.
But so,
But
like, I remember this,
I am continuing to serve under you until you're relieved of my command.
which happened. Yeah,
Well, I
later
wasn't going
on.
to bring that up, but
You know, but the reason why I was relieved wasn't because of you specifically. It was just because of the circumstances that occurred. Um, but it was like, I remember the situation where he blew my head up. I remember, you know, we were talking, and basically
we were
because,
talking. You
well, yeah, like,
ordered me to
yeah,
service for sadists who were infamous for putting their partners in the med bay. This
yeah. I
was
mean, like, I
in
remember,
violation of regulations and was a personal insult to a Draco who values honor above all else. What did
yeah.
you expect me to do?
Well, I mean, I don't know what to tell you, you know, other than I'm sorry. You know what I mean, Penny? Like, it wasn't something that I'm proud of, you know.
Well, it
I mean,
wasn't my
having his
intention to
memory.
permanently kill you. I did take the pieces and put you in regen.
I remember you watching me as I was being regened in
Yeah,
the tank too. Yeah,
it wasn't
which
my
is,
intention to permanently kill you. It was my intention to make you respect me.
yeah. But I remember that whole situation though, how that went down. Like, I remember at first we were talking, and then I was like, I ordered you to do that, and the guys that were on the ship, that were on the deck of the ship, were like, oh, and they got up, and I remember, it got out of control. I remember I was trying to, I don't know, it's like from that emotional void that I had, I wanted you to fill that void, but you weren't even like that. And I wanted to punish you. And
Well,
I remember it got out of control. And then
we've been on the ship together for what, about 5 years?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know for sure how long, I don't have like a fuck ton of memories of it, but
my awareness of it started around Thanksgiving of 2018.
Yeah.
So I was taken twice a night for 45 days for these missions that were to rescue colonists from a destroyed planet.
Yeah.
And I was livid that I was subjected to so much shit on what should have been a simple mission.
Yeah.
And
but yeah, I remember you blowing my head up though. And I remember later on you would show me images of it for sure. So it's kind of weird, like having you talk about it. I'm like, holy fuck, because I didn't know who the fuck I really was until, in that situation. Because when I first started getting memories, most of my memories were of me just being a grunt, And then I started now I have a lot of memories, and I've had a lot of people contact me, quite a few now, or talk about me where I've been an officer or upper echelons for some fucking weird reason. I guess because I just follow orders and do fucked up shit for them.
You do
my own shit.
tend to be rewarded for doing things others won't.
Yeah.
My job classification is so tied down that doesn't matter. What they do to me is they add more ships to the armada. I'm now at the category of 20 ships that I take into hyperspace together, and I go, and on the way out, I make sure nobody's stuck in a wall or a floor or a cargo container. And everybody's life on those ships is in my hands. That's my responsibility to make sure nobody is stuck in a wall.
Yeah.
And I take that fucking seriously.
Yeah.
I take pride in doing my job well. And yeah, it does take a lot out of me. Like you said, that one thing that you asked me to do, I was on the floor afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
I
know you didn't want to do it too. That's the sad part. Like, I mean,
yeah,
I could tell,
violating my conscience.
Even with you being black good, like you still had, I don't know how to explain it. Like you still had emotions, but they didn't really come forward too much. It was like rare fucking occasions, and it was mainly when I was being like extremely fucked up. Like in that situation where that happened, like you had this like scared look, and then it was quickly replaced with blowing my head up. It was like you're like, what? Like you had that what the fuck do I do kind of look, and then it was like boom, And I even like I have the feeling of like my fucking head is like, it's fucking weird. Like that whole situation, how it happened was just weird.
Well, I started with your third ventricle. It's a liquid point in the center of your brain, and you heat that up, and it just explodes from there.
Mm-hmm. That's
and
exactly how
your
I would
skull
explain it.
cracked like an eggshell.
Yeah.
And I picked up all the pieces and put you in the regen because it wasn't my intention to kill you. It was my intention to make you respect me.
Yeah. Well, I like, don't get me wrong. I know why you did it. My alter, on the other hand,
if it had been turned around, you would have been doing the same thing to me.
Yep.
It was
120%.
a simple matter of respect, and you had to learn it.
What was it that I remember like the fucking people on the ship were pissed that you were still on the ship too. The people on the deck, like they didn't like you either after that. But
They were afraid of me after that.
oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, they were.
It wasn't my intention to make everybody afraid of me, but I had to have that respect to continue to function on that ship.
But beyond that, like I remember like eventually we were trying to save that colony. I remember the Guardians and their fucking big ass fucking ship showing up. And I remember going back in time over and over and over and over and over and over again. It's like eventually the Guardians didn't know that we were going, like at first they didn't know we were going back in time until I slipped up and I was like, yeah, is that what you're gonna do? You know? And I got cocky and then they realized what the fuck we
The
were doing.
Guardians have known all along that we were going back in time to rescue the colonists, as many as we could, and they gave High Command permission to do it. They had to get permission because the Time Corps would not have tolerated that many trips back in time to the same time and space otherwise. So you're not responsible for that one.
But like anyways, like I remember like mocking them sometimes. Like it would get old hearing the same bullshit line, you know, that they would give. But I remember eventually they started following us. Every time we would jump back, like they would follow us.
Well, having come back because it's a time loop and I was returned to the time I was taken, I know that all of the efforts that we had, us, other teams, Draco assisting, Kruger assisting, we were only able to rescue half the people on that world.
Mm-hmm.
And
what was it like?
has learned that when the Guardians tell you something, you do it.
Yeah, I remember there was like this table and there was like a few another officer and I think maybe another one that was there with me, and we were like standing over this kind of map thing. I don't know like what the fuck I was looking at really. But I remember we were talking and then that's when I was taken, like just blinked out of where I was. And then I ended up in front of the council, whatever this fucking council was. But I can equate it to like some of the photos that I've seen, like with Misha's photos of some of the galactic family looking beings where they had like bright uniforms and shit. But yeah, they were like,
are the cream of the crop of every planet that is part of a level 3 civilization in the galaxy. And they are chosen in part because of their high ethical standards. They are not corruptible.
yeah. But I remember like, I mean, we discussed that basically in the last interview.
And they consider humanity to be 2-year-olds that have escaped the playpen.
Childlike, yep. And it was funny because I remember when I was conversating with them, they had brought in something up because I was like, I'm doing it for my people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they had asked why I was doing what I was doing, and I said I was doing it for my people. And they were like, doing it for your people, and they like stopped me and questioned that and was like, well, then why are you enslaving your people?
Yeah.
Why are you allowing your main planet, which was, you know, Earth or whatever the hell, you know, Terra, or whatever people call it. I don't know. I always just call it Earth.
We call it Earth. They call it Terra.
Yeah. They were like, why are you allowing your people, you know, on this planet to still be enslaved? Mm-hmm. You know, because we're still a form of enslavement. It's just a little different, you know?
Oh, come on. Human trafficking is the biggest business on the planet.
Like, there's other planets where there's full-on invasions and people are just enslaved on a planetary level openly. Mm-hmm. Whereas here you don't see it because you don't know it, you know, but it's there.
Oh, it's you don't see it in America, but it's in every country. And all of these people that disappear, what is it, 80,000 children a year disappear, never to be seen again. They're slaves off world.
Mm-hmm. And
And
they
so
said
are
that,
the people who die from cancer, and so are the people who are homeless and disappear, and so are the veterans who are homeless and disappear, and millions of people are taken and turned into cyborgs.
and they, I don't know,
And
they
the
said,
military industrial complex, their unit out there is who is doing it,
yeah. What when they said
not
that
the
though,
Germans.
that's when they said that though, that stuck with me like really deeply. Um, and it
That's
was
my
after that, it was,
whole reason for being public, is because the human trafficking has to stop. The secret space program human trafficking is just part of the whole continuum.
yeah, and it was whatever. When they said that, I felt like my honor was on the line at that point, and it really made me rethink a lot of what I did. Um, and it was like nobody came to talk on my behalf other than Commander Ashtar, and even when he was there, he was like, "What the fuck," you know. Um, but like after I was returned, the officer that was there tried to be like, "Oh, we're going to continue doing what we're doing," and because he had been brought in and then taken back because they were going to deal with him next.
Mm.
And I was like, I told him like, "You saw what the fuck I saw, right?" And he was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Fuck you, I'm not doing this shit anymore," you know. And he was like, "Oh, what?" And then all of a sudden he disappeared, and I was like, and then I was brought back there because of him, and I was like, "I fucking warned you, man. Why didn't you just listen?" I was like, "I'm not helping you," you know.
Yeah,
And
all the officers from all 20 ships have been put into some sort of prison situation, and there are other officers who have been beating the shit out of us because they think that we're traitors. And I've been beaten twice this week.
yeah,
And I've seen the face of the person who's doing it. I know who he is. And he's not going to like me because he had me in a psi cage where I could not defend myself. And a being came and melted the psi cage. And not only did I escape, but I took all of the officers with me. And we're going back to rescue more colonists. And High Command has been informed, and so has the Draco Imperial royalty.
mhm.
And
But
since several of your officers are shot up with Draco, they have an interest in us. So there will be no more capturing us and beating the shit out of us because of what our commander did. What will happen is a Draco will come and psychically interview us, and the results will be get presented. There will be no more beating. There will be simply truth. And the truth will come out, and whoever is guilty will be punished, and whoever is innocent will be cleared of all charges.
but so after I came back, I remember giving you an order um, to take all the ships to the surface of the coordinates of Earth. Um, and I remember telling you to leave. I think it was like one of the big battleships, like one of the big ships that was there with us. I told you to leave it behind. And from what I recall. And you were
Well,
like,
it's now back on rescue mission with the rest of us.
yeah, I am.
That ship is.
Oh, okay. But like, I
I don't
remember
know
like,
where you are.
yeah,
I took
well,
I took command. I'm the
yeah,
navigator. I just took the whole armada back. We're back
yeah,
at work.
yeah. I basically had us over the surface, like in the atmosphere of Earth. And I remember having open comms with all the ships. And I remember giving everybody a decision on if they would help us free Earth, like help me free Earth.
Well, free
Because of
Earth
what they had
means
said.
something different to the Germans than it would to an American group.
Yeah. To me, free Earth was free them from what's going on. What I was thinking from my perspective, and I could tell that a lot of people, some people were in shock seeing Earth, which,
Well, we were all told that Earth was dead from a cobalt war.
yeah. And some people were like, some people, there were some Draco, and then there were some that were on ships, and those ships didn't didn't accept what I was doing, for sure. There were some ships, and it was like ships turned on each other. We were outnumbered and outgunned, and the big ship eventually came through and found us. Um, from my recollection, they showed up and they were like, "What the fuck," you know? And I remember like I was basically planning what I was gonna do. I remember seeing your face because you remember me being an evil piece of shit, and you were like, "What the fuck?" I just like did a fucking 360, just boom, you know? And
Yeah, you just were basically spinning, and all I could see was all of us getting in trouble for you losing it.
yeah. And you know, someone came over the intercom after like ships started turning on ships, basically in the process of what happened. Um, and it was like people were ready to give their life on my order, and there was people that were like, "Fuck you, you're not high command," you know. Um, and someone came over the intercoms and was like, "Stand down, you know, like don't do this because we will kill everybody." And I knew at that point that it was already too late at that point when that ship showed up. And I remember like knowing that if we did invade, because I was going to drop ships over America first, and then possibly have to use like a nuclear bomb. How you mentioned that, I had memories come back where that was one of my plan Bs to
Well,
distract them.
the being who destroyed the Psy cage was livid that a nuke had been. She said it had been used. She
See,
was
because
absolutely livid.
I don't remember it going forward past, like from my memories, I don't remember it going forward past being contacted and told that I was going to be boarded and brought into the head ship, um, after I basically stood down, because I thought about it and I was like, all these people are just going to be slaughtered, because I was really analytical with that kind of situation, and
Okay.
that's what I remember so far. And then I remember being brought in before some kind of high command and questioned. And I remember saying, they were like, what were you thinking, or some kind of shit like that. And I was like, I almost did it. I was like, I almost freed him, and they were like, what the fuck, you know? And I think I was probably tortured, but I remember I eventually got, like, they were talking about killing me, but then like Johan had taken me to one of the scout ships to basically be sent back to Earth. And he had mentioned something about, it's not time yet, but eventually we'll free our people, or some kind of shit like that. It was like a weird conversation, and like it happened crazy, like,
Well, if
but
I've timed this correctly, we are just about at the just about 5 minutes over our time. So, yeah. So I'm not going to edit it. So when it is played on Global Enlightenment Radio Network, it's going to be a just over 2-hour show. So I would like to say thank you for coming. And we covered a lot in this one, and I hope you're okay.
Yeah.